to me, the measure of a person is who you are, not what you have. I know a lot of very, let's call it successful people who have a serious amount of money. Jesus. None of them are happy.
Pádraig O'Céidigh, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, Conor. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much for coming in. I wanted to start with decision making and specifically your safe harbour. Could you just talk a little bit about that concept? Because I suppose you wrote a whole book on this topic, and it's obviously very important to you. And I'm interested in the safe harbour concept specifically and how it relates to decision making.
Okay. Safe harbour to me is really, really important. And to me, it's a fundamental to who we are and what we do in life. So imagine you've got an A4 sheet of paper and you've got a pen and you do a circle, draw a circle on that and call that circle your safe harbour. So the important thing about that safe harbour are the people who are in it. So start off and put the initials of all of them, probably the most important person in your life in the middle, their initials, and you can roll out from there with the initials of other people. And then you put in there that safe harbour, what work you do, the business you're in, the job you do. And then maybe a couple of other things. It could be jogging, could be running, it could be playing football. Other things that are really fundamentally central to you in life. And then ask yourself the question, what would that circle look like if I drew this 10 years ago or 20 years ago? Would it be any different? Can guarantee you it would be. There'd be different people in there. You'd be a different stage in life. And in 10 years' time, there'll be some changes again. So the safe harbour is not necessarily permanent all your life from birth to death. It changes over time. The important thing about the safe harbour is, one, to identify it, because we sometimes go around in the haze and don't actually think like this. And the second thing is to kind of audit or check or ask yourself, the people who I see in there in my safe harbour, they're the people I need to have in there? Are they giving me energy or taking energy from me? Or they're stabilising or destabilising my safe harbour? That's the first place for decision making. So where is your go-to place? Who is in that go-to place? What is your safe harbour? So it's not necessarily the same for every person, and it changes over time, as I mentioned. And then, so that's the core of decision making. Next thing then, in relation to decision making, you ask yourself, well, what implications will this decision have on my safe harbour? Will it strengthen it or weaken it? Or does it have any effect on my safe harbour? So that I'm suggesting to people to create a model or a process for decision making and focusing around their safe harbour. Let's take, for example, a professional rugby player, captain of the Irish rugby team, whoever he or she may be, and they define out what their safe harbour is. And a big part of their safe harbour is obviously their teammates and their probably coach, trainer, and so on and so forth, and of course their family. That's going to change in 5 or 10 years' time quite significantly, particularly when they retire and move on. So they've got to be able to adopt and accept that. So they can ask the question, I'm just simplifying it here now, if I go on the town for the tear for the night, is that going to strengthen or weaken my safe harbour? If I start taking drugs or whatever, is that going to strengthen or weaken my safe harbour? So you'd start saying, in reference to your safe harbour, form decisions that actually are going to strengthen it or that challenges you in relation to the decision you make. So, Conor, that's just the fundamental of it.
Did you learn this the hard way, or how did you kind of come across it? You know, because it's kind of at the core of your book. You know, it's the first kind of thing you talk about, and it's kind of you refer to it throughout. Then as you know, how are these decisions going to impact my safe harbour? And I was wondering, just while reading this, was this something that you kind of you always knew innately, or that you learned at school, or was it something you kind of had to learn?
No, it wasn't something I learned at school. First of all, I learned lots of things at school, but that wasn't one of them. There are probably two. One is there are two strands in relation to, for me, coming to the space of safe harbour. One is my own experience and how important my wife and family are to me. And am I keeping going and building ARN or a business? Is that going to be of benefit to my safe harbour? Or could it undermine my safe harbour? Could it affect my health? Could it affect my relationship with my wife and my family because I'm not around them, and so on and so forth? So a decision on whether you drive on or you get a CEO in or you actually sell the company, to me, was based around, is this going to improve or disimprove my safe harbour? The second area is that I'm passionate about is leadership. And I still mentor quite a number of business people, and I used to mentor Irish international rugby players and also some Olympic athletes. And I really learned from them about leadership and how you lead. And then I created a program, an executive 4-day program on leadership with a professor called George Kohlreiser in IMD University in Lausanne in Switzerland. And I introduced the area of safe harbour into that model as well in relation to leadership, because it's like this glass of water. That's there. The glass holds the water in place. But if that glass wasn't there, it'd be all over the place. So look at that glass as your safe harbour. And what are you going to put into it? And what's going to hold it? And why is it there? And is it porous? Are there holes at the bottom of it that the water is coming out of or not? And that's why you kind of audit and challenge your safe harbour, because you want to keep a focus, you want to keep clarity, and you want your decisions to be made in a way that's going to strengthen, not weaken your safe harbour. So I learned probably in both areas. One, the knocks of life, and the other one is when I started putting together leadership programs with some eminent professors from around the world.
Why did you decide to buy ARN?
That's a great question. I still ask myself that. The reason I bought ARN is that I was in my early 30s. And I said to myself, Pádraig, jump outside your comfort zone. Try and have a shot at something different. Now, you might fail, and there's a good chance you will fail. But it's not about success or failure. It's about me internally in myself and challenging myself and seeing how far I can go and what I can do. And the airline was just flying to the Aran Islands. It wasn't doing well at the time, doing quite poorly. So I remortgaged my home and ended up buying it. And I needed a partner in place. I got a partner in place, and we got on really well. And he then sold his shares out to me a number of years after that. So after about probably 4 or 5 years, I owned 100% of the company. And that was daunting, because when you're in partnership, you can have somebody you can kind of rely on. But when you're on your own, you say, wow. And then I'd go home and I'd share the problems I had in the business with my wife. Then I said, all I'm doing is stressing her. That's undermining my safe harbour. So I decided to take it on myself. Excuse me, I'm coughing a bit. Yeah. So
your partner was Eugene O'Kelly originally in the business. How did that come about? And did you know each other, or had you worked with each other previously, or?
No, we hadn't worked together previously. Eugene was an anaesthetist in the hospital in Galway, and I had a law practice at that time, and we just bumped into each other. I think it was on a golf course. We got on really well. We would have a cup of coffee afterwards, and I told him about what I was looking at doing, buying the airline, and he said, wow, I'd love to be part of that. And I said, come on, let's jump on board. So it's just purely that.
How did you discover the airline in the first place?
I knew about the airline going back years because I'm from Connemara, Spittle, And I knew about Air Ireland, and we'd go out to the Aran Islands and so on at different times. So I knew about the airline. And then it was pretty prominent in the media, even on 6-1 News, that the airline was doing very poorly and could well close down. So I contacted the owner, a guy called Tim Kilroe. He was based in Manchester. And I asked him, would he, sell me the airline? And he agreed to meet me. So I went to Manchester to meet him. And during the course of the meeting, he said, sure, you've no money. I said, that's true. He said, you want to buy my airline? You have no money. I said, yeah, but give me a chance. I might be able to raise it. So I did. A bank, which surprised me, were willing to back me because I knew nothing about aviation. And I remortgaged my home. And then Eugene came in and he put a few bob into the company. And that was it.
Given how successful you were with Air Ireland, right, and the kind of the struggle and everything that came afterwards, you've talked about the decision in your book as there's an example in the book about that you were given the opportunity to invest in another nursing home in Mayo, and the due diligence and the very diligent work that you did to think through that decision and everything else. And then you compare that to the Air Ireland decision, which was far more emotional and almost like a gut feel. And I'm wondering, do you have an opinion really on, what kind of the best way to make these decisions are, and what the kind of, I suppose, is it whether you should be going through this kind of careful due diligence on each individual decision that you make, or whether sometimes you can just kind of tell what's going to happen?
It very much depends on a couple of factors. The main one is your circumstances. My circumstances when I got involved in Air Ireland, first of all, my back is to the wall and I just wanted to go and do something. So I was willing to take a big risk. Plus, quite frankly, I was very naive. And that's being straight about it. In relation to nursing home, I already had a number of nursing homes. I knew how nursing homes operated. I knew where to look in relation to due diligence. I was able to do a far more educated, informed assessment on whether I would invest or not. So if I was starting out in nursing homes day one, I would have taken a bigger risk because I wouldn't have known where to go in relation to it. I'd read up and learn a bit about it, or as much as I could, but it's not the same as owning a business. So it's not. You can read all you want in books and all of that kind of stuff, but you got to be in there, as you know, you got to be in there to really understand it. And there's only one way to go and do that, and that's just go for it. Give it your best shot.
Would I be right in saying that, I suppose, that decision to buy Air Ireland, that's not really, that wasn't kind of it over then, because you obviously had to grow the business and think strategically about it and to make it into a success. Am I right in saying that that just wasn't one decision in isolation? It kind of came a number of decisions then over the course of the next decade.
Yeah, it's, and I think this is important. Initially, I wanted to put the money together to acquire the company. That was, let's call it the vision or the objective. The next thing that I wanted to do was, I want to make this company profitable. It had never been profitable. So what do I need to do to make it profitable? And have positive cash flow. Then when I achieved that, I said, okay, is there anything else we can do with the airline? It's in a secure base now. It's solid. It is positive cash flow. It's making a bit of profit. I've good staff there. They're all gelled well together. It's a good culture. What's the next mountain to climb with this airline or this business? And one day I met a great man who became a good friend of mine called Larry Stanley. Larry was the CEO of Aer Lingus, and he flew out to the Aran Islands with his wife for the weekend, and he inquired about me, and I met him. And Larry said to me, what's your plan for this little airline? And I said, I just want to keep it profitable. I want to have positive cash flow because I don't have the money to put into it. So I just want positive cash flow and profitability. And he says, that's it. And I said, yeah. Excuse me. And he said to me, he says, Aer Lingus cannot be all things to all people. I said, what do you mean? He said that Aer Lingus are flying internally in Ireland, Ireland to UK and Europe, and Ireland to America. That's 3 different business models. Would you ever consider flying internally in Ireland? That then became my next vision, that I could start flying internally in Ireland. When we achieved that, I want to start flying into the UK and into northern France, which we did. Then I wanted to become the best regional airline in Europe, which we did. Then I wanted to be the fastest growing regional airline in Europe, which we did. So the vision and being the fastest growing and the best regional airline in Europe was as a result of a process over a period of years. So vision doesn't appear to you, wake up one morning, hey, geez, I have this great vision. And a big part of the vision is listening and awareness. Like me listening to Larry, and it was only over a 5-minute conversation, but taking that in and saying, yeah, that's interesting. He believes in me. He thinks we can go and do this. Let me check it out. Let me see what we can do. So that's kind of where it came from.
Airlines you have a reputation for being very difficult businesses to run. There's a few obviously standout, really, really profitable airlines that have done very well, but over time they tend to have been difficult businesses to kind of make profitable. How did you do that?
That's very true. The model I created there was 2 parts to it. One is we tendered for government contracts called PSO. And they're all over Europe, and any airline in Europe can tender for them for any country. So I wanted to get a sweet spot that we could actually operate government contracts in Ireland cheaper than anybody else could operate them, and more effectively. So I went for particular types of aircraft, ATR 42s, and also started building a relationship with the local airlines, airports. Knock, Sligo, Donegal, Galway, Waterford, Kerry, so on, Cork and Shannon. So then that became my big part of my secure base, my safe harbour, because now I had guaranteed income. And then I said, what else can I do over and above that? So now I had a reasonably significant amount of my fixed costs covered. And I started doing marginal routes, extra routes that would not fit the Ryanair model. Either the Ryanair airplane would not fit into the airport because the airport's too small, or there weren't enough passengers to make it viable for Ryanair. So I decided to try and keep that distance from the likes of Ryanair, and that started becoming pretty well for us. So that was really it. But like, we were carrying up to 1.3 million passengers at one stage. If I could have got an extra euro per passenger, I'd have an extra 1.3 million euros to my bottom line. And getting that extra euro was damn near impossible. There's a sweet spot on which you can charge a fare, and above that, kind of the law of diminishing returns starts coming in. Why is aviation so difficult? The reason aviation is so difficult, and I learned this from aviation, but I learned it from being chairman of the judging panel for EY Entrepreneur of the Year, where I would have seen hundreds, if not thousands, of business plans of various entrepreneurs, various industries. So look at aviation. Aviation is a very high fixed cost. Aircraft, maintenance, fuel is expensive, airport charges, Eurocontrol, that's the air traffic control thing, all of those. They're fixed and they're quite high, whether you have 1 or 100 passengers on board the airplane. So that means all of your income is variable. So you have a high fixed cost, and variable income is totally variable. That's why I needed to put in a floor of fixed income by getting some government contracts. That gave me, I suppose, a bit of space and reduced the risk. But without that, it's even much higher risk because of what after sharing with you. Like a new ATR airplane, at the time cost $25 million. Now I remember at one stage we bought 14 of them. So we did. And we're out in Toulouse, and actually one of the people who spoke at the launch of it was a fellow called Trevor Brennan, a great rugby player back in the day. And I became pretty friendly with Trevor, a real character, real, because he was living in Toulouse, still does, I think. There's a great pub there called Danu, because he used to play with, actually his sons, I think, played with France underage. So, yeah, that's a big reason why aviation is high risk, very high fixed costs, and all your income is variable.
Taking that into account, plus you having no experience in aviation, as you said before, the bank were willing to bet on you, and you were obviously willing to bet on yourself. What is it, do you think? Thinking about, because I mean, this is a Irish success story, really, right? And I'm wondering, kind of, what was it? Do you think, was it just grit, tenacity, hard work, or was there kind of something else, do you think, that kind of made it what it became?
The bank were willing to help me to a degree. I went to the bank that were the bank for the owners or sellers of the airline at that time. So the bank knew traditionally the cash flow and so on and so forth of it. They also knew that the owner, Tim Kirlow, was based in Manchester and certainly wouldn't have been around or in and around the place as frequently as I would have been, because I live close by. The only thing is the bank believed in me, I'll be honest with you, and they gave me a break to a degree. Now, again, as I said, I had my home mortgaged on the airline, and I had to get another equity partner in as well. So there was quite limited exposure for the bank in it. And I realised straight away that I need to prove myself. I need to prove myself to the banks. I need to prove myself to the staff in particular. I need to prove myself to passengers. I need to prove myself to the aviation authority, which were fundamental. Can we trust this guy who has no background or experience in aviation to ensure that he's operating a safe service? So I very, very much measure twice and cut once. As in, let's get this right. Let's make sure it's even righter than right. And it took time. It cost probably more money. But I learned the ropes. And what was really important is your integrity and being upfront and honest. And if things happen, hand up, say, look, we did have a problem with maintenance here. We did have an issue. But you know what? We've it sorted out, and this is what we've done. So you tell Dave, this was the problem. We didn't fly the airplane because we just didn't want from a safety point of view. This is what we've done about it, and we're happy now. We've tested it. So that time, if, for example, the cash flow during the summer was good for the airline because of tourism going to the Aran Islands, and if one of the months wasn't great, I'd be in straight away to the bank and said, look, we're not really hitting our numbers here. This is the reason why. But you know what I'm going to do? This is what I'm going to do to try and bump up the September, October period, or even Christmas period, to get more people, islanders, rather than go on the boat, to consider flying instead. So that type of relationship built a level of trust and a level of confidence. And I could see then, oh yeah, he's doing that. Yeah, we're okay with him. But initially they had me on a very tight leash, as it were. But then they started letting go because they developed more confidence in me and actually go on doing it.
Was it ever easy? So I suppose it sounds like a very kind of difficult journey, right? And whenever someone's in here and we're having a conversation like this, it just sounds like a very, very painful journey all the way along. And I'm wondering, did it ever kind of feel that you had your head above water and you were happy with the way things are going? And did that kind of ever have a lasting effect?
It never had a lasting effect, but we're doing really well financially and operationally for a long, long time. That was, quite frankly, up until Ryanair had a big go at us, quite frankly, and the recession hit us big time back in 2008 to 10 to 11. And we really were doing very, very, very well. But yeah, with serious, serious tough times. Like, I remember speaking at an event, I think it was in Castlebar, and there was this lady was I suppose the chairperson of it, and she invited, she says, there's 300 or 400 people in the hall, invited me to speak, and I stood up and I started talking, and after about 5 or 10 minutes, she said, excuse me, Pádraig, said, how do you sleep at night? And I looked at her and I says, I sleep like a baby. I wake up every hour crying.
And was it like that? And it was, I mean, and had you, I suppose, had you known that before getting into it, do you think you would have gone into it?
Oh, hindsight is 2020. It was really, really tough. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Far from it. It was really, really tough. Like, I'd no money. I'd no experience. I'd no background in the area. I had to prove myself. Um, and there were others then who had pot shots at me at different times in different ways, which made it more difficult. And but I kept going. I'm glad I kept going. I genuinely don't regret it. I think, I'm just thinking about your question now. Why, you gotta ask yourself the question, why are you doing what you're doing? It goes down to that. And for me, the reason I was doing it was to create and develop and improve access for regional Ireland in around to Dublin and out to the UK. There's nobody else doing it. That was my raison d'etre. That was my purpose. But in order to do that, I needed to have a financially successful airline. If I had as a primary objective, I don't care about regional Ireland. I just want to put the airplanes where I'm going to make most money. Just don't care. That would have been a different type of an aviation airline model based on the mindset I would have had at that time. So it depends really on what your objectives and what your goals are.
Do you think though, perhaps having that purpose is kind of fuel for the success, and maybe that if it was just purely financial, that perhaps some way you would have maybe lost steam or something along the way?
I think I would have made a lot more money if it was purely financial, particularly in the short and medium term. And what I would do then more than likely is sell the airline and then it's up to somebody else. Definitely I would have made more money. What kept me going during tough times was the benefit that the airline was providing to regional and rural Ireland. That was the thing, because then there were people who were really dependent on it, and it was providing a really good service. Like, for example, people in Donegal with cancer will have to come to Dublin for treatment. It could be 5 hours or more on a car or a bus to get there, with bad roads from part of it. And they could fly in about a half an hour. And we had a lot of cancer patients like that, and they and their families saying to us, but for you guys, we wouldn't be able to do that. So to me, it was a lot deeper than what the balance sheet looked like. There's a lot more to it than that.
How important is that purpose though? Because even the title of your book, The Purposeful Decision Maker, and that theme kind of runs the whole way through it and runs the whole way through your career. Do you think that's an important part anyway of running a business and to kind of seeing it through, or do you think it's just individual and it was just important for you?
No, I think it's true overall. I think it's really important overall. I think what it does is actually cements your drive and energy when things get tough. So it does. It gives you that extra layer of saying, I got to keep going. I got to beat this, because this is more than just me. It's not just about me. It's about a lot more. There's a much bigger picture out there than just me. So in businesses, particularly entrepreneurial businesses are not easy. They're really, really, really tough. So they're, and you get sidekicks and you get God knows what coming at you from all angles that you don't see them coming. And you got to be reactionary and you got to be proactionary and you got to make quick calls on the move. So an entrepreneurial business is really, really challenging. You don't have the resources. Very often you don't have the experience. You don't have the people. You can't afford a high cost of, let's call it, advisors and consultants and so on. So you got to make do with what you have. Like when I won Ireland's Entrepreneur of the Year, with a Christmas party every year, with a back in Clifton and the Abbey Glen, and the staff in Connemara gave me a Christmas present, which was really a present of congratulations for winning Ireland's Entrepreneur of the Year. It's a chess set. I don't play chess. And they know I cannot play chess. But they had written on it 4 words, which meant everything to me. And this was the purpose of it. And what it was finite resources, infinite possibilities. I think that 4 words sums up what I'm trying to share with you here now about entrepreneurship. But the infinite, you very finite resources, but you just have to have the passion and drive and keep going. You're going to get so many knocks and so many kicks backs and so on. It's like, and I sometimes say this, it's like you're pushing a ball up a hill, and it's really hard, and the hill is steep, and it's getting steeper, and there's little rocks and pebbles in front of you that actually makes it more difficult for you. But you know then what happens sometimes? You have a couple of people who are on the other side of the ball pushing it down against you. And you say, why in the hell are they pushing the ball down against me? It makes no difference to them in the world where I push the ball to. And you say, feck it, why don't they get their own ball and push it up or down a hill? And that's tough, and that hits us all. Because you have that, not only in Ireland, you have that sense of begrudgery, and difficulty and challenges out there. So you do. But you just keep going. You just keep pushing that ball up the hill. And more than likely, eventually, they'll get tired and they'll let you go.
Do you have any idea why you won the award that year? Because the EY group, it's not exactly. I mean, the competition, I'm sure, was challenging. You know, in order to win it, the finalists, all in their own right, have built incredible businesses. Do you know why you were awarded it that year?
I haven't a clue. After I won it, I really felt a strong imposter syndrome. Really did. I was saying, there's something wrong here. Did I say something that I shouldn't have said? Did I say something that was wrong? They have the figures. Are the figures okay? Why they picked me? Because I felt there were a lot more better, more worthy entrepreneurs out there in the competition. And I still really don't know. But my sense is afterwards, when I became a judge for the World Entrepreneur of the Year and chair of the Irish judging panel, it's actually not what you have is the most important thing. It's actually what you do with the limited resources, finite resources, infinite possibilities, and the creativity you bring to something, and the passion you have and commitment you have to actually do whatever it takes to make it work. So you could have somebody in a business or an industry that's doing fine, it's ticking over, it's making a few bob. But there are not that many entrepreneurial challenges about it. Like, Entrepreneur of the Year program is about the individual, not about the business they create. So who are you? What are you about? What's your vision? Why did you do what you did? Why do you keep going? Why do you start getting back on the horse every time you fall off? Because you fall off so many times. What's deep inside in you as a person? And I think the judges might have felt or saw, wow, this guy's got a crazy vision, but you know what? He might achieve it because he's that kind of a guy. He's resilient. He won't give up. He's going to keep going. He's going to keep going. And then they'd like to have somebody who they can look as a role model for others, because that's a big part of the Entrepreneur of the Year program. It's not about the 24 finalists. It's more about how they can ignite entrepreneurship in their own community in Ireland and further afield. So that's a very, very important part of it as well. So has this person got I think in Irish and speak in English, so excuse me, could have whatever that means. Because I grew up speaking Irish, I had to learn English. So the Cuireadh is do they have the presence, the physical, mental, spiritual presence to actually engage and inspire people to actually, hey, I'm going to go for it. I'm not afraid of failure, and I may fail, but failure is not going to hold me back from going for it.
How impactful was your heart attack and that moment for you? And maybe you could, because I'm not quite sure when it happened for you in your business journey and I suppose life journey. Maybe you could just talk a little bit about how it impacted the other areas of your life.
It happened on Tuesday, 17th of January 2012, at about 9:20 in the morning. I was in the gym that morning at about 7:30, 7:15. Had a good session. I was supposed to go to Dublin because I was creating a new airline called Aer Lingus Regional with the CEO of Aer Lingus at the time, Christoph Muller, German CEO, great guy. And he changed the meeting from the morning to the afternoon. And at that time, I'd been, I suppose, coaching or mentoring the captain of the Irish rugby team. And I then, with EY alumni, created a mentoring program for all of the Irish rugby squad. And that was going really, really well. And I was pushing that out so that each of the provinces, Ulster, Munster, Leinster and Connacht, particularly those players who were not on the international squad, would have an EOI entrepreneur mentor. So I was full steam ahead in that. There's a fellow called Alan Mulholland who was managing the Galway Gaelic football team at the time. And he was aware of this and he said, would you create this model for the Galway footballers? And I said, sure, I will. So I arranged to meet Alan. I was going to meet him the following day, but I met him at about 9:15 in the morning in a coffee shop in Dominic Street in Galway. And I started getting a pain in my side. It catches me now when I breathe, because it just mentally brings back. So Alan said, maybe you pulled a muscle doing weights in the gym. It's not that kind of a thing. It started getting worse and worse and worse. And it started taking over the whole left side of my body. It started off just in there and it started moving out. And it was beginning to cripple me. I mean, put me in a straitjacket and the pain was moving. I said, Alan, I need to get to a doctor. Can I help you? No, leave me alone. I'm fine. I didn't want to cause a scene. So I went down, got as far as the car, got inside the door of the car. I wasn't able to drive the car, but I saw Alan running towards me. No, Alan didn't know where I was parked or what kind of a car I drove. First place he looked, he found me. Pushed me into the passenger seat, drove me at speed to the hospital. Parked where the ambulances park and told me, look, for God's sake, get inside the door of A&E. I'll park your car. Got inside the door of A&E and there was a long queue at reception, so I jumped the queue, to be honest, which I knew I don't know I was wrong, but I knew I wasn't well. Because about 6 or 7 months beforehand, I did a full medical check, including cardiology, and I was told I was fine. A few months before that, I ran the New York Marathon. I was in the gym. I thought I didn't know. And I went in, I saw a group of doctors in the corridor. I said, I'm not well. I said, can you help me? One of them said, who do you think you are? Are you on the list here? Did you go through reception? And I said, no, but I started walking out again to try and go to reception, but I was struggling. And there was a young trainee doctor there, and she ignored what her boss, senior doctor, said, and she brought me into a cubicle. And I was lying there on the bed in the cubicle, and pain was 10 out of 10 or 11 out of 10. And I was lying on my back, and the next thing was, I didn't know how, but I was on my side, on my left side. I could feel I'd thrown up. And now there was not just one young lady doctor. There was about a half a dozen there between doctors and nurses. And they started talking to me, and I don't know if I responded or not, but they wheeled me down. They were kind of walking fast, running slow down a corridor. See, I was in a lift, and I could see then I was going into a room which I could see was an operating theatre. There's the lights and doctors, nurses dressed in scrubs. So I said, thank God they don't know my name, because I don't want my wife and kids to know, because I know this is serious. And they probably know what's wrong with me. So I found out later that that young lady doctor, she was going to go out to get monitoring equipment to put on me. She doesn't know why she stayed there with me. She did CPR to get me back. That was the first time my heart stopped. Alan Mulholland, by pure fluke, found me. He didn't know where I was parked or what kind of a car I had. It's the first place he looked, he found me. There was no traffic on the road to the hospital, which is about 1.5 miles. No, Alan broke the traffic lights in what they call Cook's Corner on the way. So I could see it. So keep going. So, honest to goodness. So all of that. And then during the procedure, I didn't know what was happening. There was a kind of a screen, a bluish screen there, and there was something, there was one doctor, I suppose surgeon, who was doing something in my groin, and I could feel something going up around there and so on. And but I was fully conscious. And then pain was terrible. I felt that I was going to die. And I asked myself, am I okay to die? And I asked myself, will my wife and kids be okay after I die? That they're okay. And I said, well, did I give life the best shot I could? I said, you bloody idiot, you did a lot of stupid things, you did things wrong, you didn't do things you should do, you did things you shouldn't do. And I said, I'm the same as anybody else. I never did anything to hurt or damage anyone in my life. I said, God, and this is important to me. Like, I'd be a Christian, I wouldn't be a strong Catholic, I'd be a pretty strong Christian. I said, God, I don't know if you're a man or a woman. And it's your call. But if it's time for me to go, I'm going to go. But I'm going to keep fighting to try and stay here for as long as I can. I was out of it then for a while. I was not in the hospital bed. And I was told it took about 2.5 minutes, that I was flatlined. They were able to see it on the monitors. I was flatlined. And they put on, geez, you've better English than me. What's the jump leads? What do you call the jump leads? Defibrillator.
Yeah.
That's it. You're dead right.
Do you know what it is, Oscar? I don't know what it is.
Jesus, we don't have them in Gaeilge. So we don't. So they put on the defibrillator. They had to try it a few times. Eventually it worked. They needed to put stronger, whatever, electric current through it. And shortly after that, I felt I was maybe getting a bit better. Pain wasn't as strong. And I said to the cardiologist who was working there, I didn't know he was a cardiologist. I said, how's it going now? You getting on? He ignored me. Jeez, I felt like Christy Moore. How's the crack? Like, you know. I said, pour a cup on to yourself. So then I asked him, I said, what's your name? I said, if I know his name, I might have an idea what he does and what's wrong with me. And he says, my name is Kieran Daly. I said, you're the cardiologist? He said, I am. I said, I've never met you. I said, oh, that's brilliant. I've been dying to meet you. He says, I'm doing this job for 32 years. First time ever anybody had said that to me in this situation. Because I was just feeling good. I was getting there. Pain was gone from 11 out of 10 to about 7 out of 10, and it was going the right way. So whatever he was doing was working. So then I was in the recovery room, and he told me what was wrong. And then I asked him, would you have the serial number for me to put in the stent of the stent? He said, why do you want it? Well, I said, look, I've been talking to Boston Scientific, are a big stent making company in Galway, one of the largest in the world. And I spoke to their leadership team, and they told me that 1 in every 4 stents that's implanted in people in the world is made in Galway. So I said, Jesus, I'm a Galway man. I hope it's a Galway stent, for God's sake. Started laughing. He said, yeah, it is. And I said, who made it? And he said, Medtronic. I said, would you have the serial number? He said, what do you want serial number? Well, I said, if you put a part in a plane, you have to keep for 12 years. Jesus, if you stick something in there, you got to flipping, as you know yourself, keep some sort of a record of it. He says, yeah, we do. What do you want it for? Well, I said, I want to go up to Medtronic. I want to meet the people who were actually on the assembly line when that stent was being made. I want to thank them because I'm so grateful. Because without what they do, I wouldn't be here. And there's millions like me around the world that wouldn't be here. I'm fortunate I don't live too far away. I can go and show my appreciation in person. So I went up there and I met them in what I call is the clean room. And they were all dressed in white. There was a white kind of, I suppose, not surgical stuff, but neat, clean. And I felt quite emotional there because something they did is in here keeping me going. And they said then, one of them came up and said, we have a present for you. Thank you. For they presented me with the exact replica of the stent that's in there. So I have that at my bedside locker at home that I keep. That reminds me of how lucky and how grateful I am. And it's kind of like a spare wheel as well if something happens.
In a sense, you going to Medtronic, for those people who have made the stent, I don't want to put words in their mouth or do their thinking for them, but that must give them a sense of purpose to see a real life example of how this has actually saved someone's life and the work that they do and how important it is.
Exactly. And that's why I went there, because I want to show appreciation for what they do on the assembly line. They're making widgets. They're saving people's lives.
What was it? What was the cause of the heart attack? Why you were a fit guy, and was there anything that you could have done prior to this to prevent it?
There was, big time. Great question. I was working all hours God had given me to keep the airline going, to try and keep it in survival mode after the recession and after Ryanair, Michael O'Leary trying to close us down and causing us huge issues. So what happened was stress, quite frankly. The cardiologist said to me, if you're overweight, I tell you to lose weight. If you're drinking too much, I tell you to give up drink. If you're smoking too much or doing drugs, I tell you to pull out of that. If it's hereditary, I'll be able to tell you that, and this is what you can do about it. It's none of those. The last one is, and the big killer is stress. I didn't realize I was as stressed as I was. I was seriously, seriously stressed. My wife and kids did. They told me that we go out for dinner and said, you're physically here, but your head is someplace else. You're not with us. So I kind of slept like a baby, as I said earlier, woke up every hour crying. And that's what caused it. So from my hospital bed, when I got out of the kind of cardiac intensive care section, I phoned up and I sold the airline from my hospital bed, basically. It wasn't about money. It was about my safe harbour. It was me to survive to, hopefully, which I did, see my kids walk up the aisle, walk up with my daughters, getting married, see grandchildren being born, having some wonderful times with my wife and friends, and just having a shot at life. And also, quite frankly, being a senator for 4 years, that was really interesting. So it was. And I enjoyed that. So it has given me an amazing opportunity that I probably would still have stuck with it, but for the heart attack, which would not strengthen my secure base. Far from it.
Isn't it? It's interesting, I think, that so many entrepreneurs go through this, almost like a life-threatening near-death experience due to stress, and it just kind of shows the difficulty in managing oneself throughout the journey.
Yeah, it's really difficult. But I realized that because of the stress, I was not a great asset to the company because I wasn't able to think clearly. I wasn't acting clearly. I had too many things going on in my head at the one time. So I wasn't able to make good, clear decisions because of all that was coming in there. So I actually went to this thing before then. I went that we would recruit a CEO to run the company instead of me because I was not the best person to run the company. That's really important for entrepreneurs. Because you're an entrepreneur, you are brilliant at one area, and that's actually starting and growing and developing a business. It's a different skill set to running and managing a business, totally different. And just because you're good at one doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be good at that. More than likely you're not. It's very, very difficult to be all things to all people. I actually don't know anybody who is. So it makes total sense at a certain time that you get professional hired guns management in there to actually run your and step back and give them the space to actually go and do it. And you then can keep an eye on it and keep the entrepreneurial gene in relation to creativity, growth, opportunities, changes, and so on and so forth, outside the box thinking, which entrepreneurs are good at. That you actually keep that flow there, but that you're not down in the weeds and running the day-to-day business.
Would you have done that earlier then, given that you had the heart attack? Do you think if you had kind of stepped back earlier, that would have maybe helped your stress levels?
Looking back, what I should have done, and I had an opportunity to do this, I could have sold the airline back in 2006 or 7 for an awful lot of money. And I didn't. That's the single biggest thing that would have made the difference. The stress in my situation was caused, not fully, but most of it by external situations, over which I had zero control. With volcanic ash, with recession, and with Ryanair going hard for me, trying to close me down. I had no influence in any of those three, but yet it had a huge effect on my business model and on me. And the biggest thing is I felt a huge responsibility for my staff. I cannot let them down. I got to keep fighting because of them. I'm just not going to give up because they're great people. And that built up the stress on me, and there was no release valve at all for it because I was committed to my staff.
If someone had offered you, and I don't know if anyone did back in 2006, 2007, had made an offer for the company, there was probably a reason why you weren't looking for it to sell it at that stage. Maybe you were really enjoying what was happening at that point in the company. Can you remember kind of back around that time, what might have prevented you from actually making that move?
There were two offers made to me in relation to the company. One by a very wealthy Irish investor, and the other one by a kind of bank stroke private equity firm in London. Another one, then another London business wanted to bring me on AIM, the alternative investment market in London. And I didn't go on it. I didn't go on it mainly because I felt there was a lot more traction in the company. And being blunt about it, and this is why I hesitated whether I'd say it, I didn't get good advice. I took the advice that was given to me, which wasn't necessarily good advice. And I should have sold.
I mean, I suppose having gone on the journey with the company, it can sometimes, for entrepreneurs, it can sometimes feel like a very emotional decision to let go of something that they've built and to go on the journey that you went on. Would that have played a part, do you think?
That's a great question, because I saw that with so many entrepreneurs. It's their baby. And you know what they do? They identify themselves with it. And the public identified them with it. And they just cannot let go. That's really, really unfortunate. And I learned about the importance and power of letting go at a very early stage. So I would have been happy to let go. That wouldn't have been an issue for me. It's just that I took the wrong advice and I accepted the wrong advice from people who had probably other agendas, or who didn't have enough of the know-how and knowledge and deep knowledge that I needed to make a decision, which is so right. Like, one of the things I studied for a while in the Masters in Mindfulness. And there's an area something I'm really interested in, is the whole area of Buddhism. And in Buddhism, there's a couple of principles, but there's one principle that talks about letting go, the power of letting go, and the power of attachment, and the importance of detachment. And that's something that I objectively, actively worked on for a long number of years, for 20 plus years. And anybody who's listening to this, if you take just one message from this, ask yourself, can I detach myself from particularly a business? Is it all consuming? Am I able to let go? And am I able to move on? That's so important. I used to teach, and I left teaching and I set up a law practice and thing. And I remember teachers saying to me, former teachers, they mean well, nice people, very nice people, said, Jesus, Pádraig, why did you leave? You had a steady job, great summer holidays. You could go teaching in the Gaeltacht in the summer and make a few extra bob. And now you don't know if you're going to have a client today or not, or tomorrow. You know, no idea of your income. You have a good pensionable job. You can have a nice lifestyle. Oh no, I wouldn't let go of that. Some of the same teachers, I meet them now, that say, aren't you lucky you left? And I said, why didn't you leave? You're the same. Oh no, I had kids, I had a mortgage, I had a loan on a car, I had to put the kids through education, through school and so on. No, it wasn't easy for me. And the power you give yourself of detachment is really important.
I was gonna ask you actually about your journey up until when you bought Air Aaron, because if you look at it from when you bought the company to I suppose the success you had, as hard as it was, um, to being awarded Entrepreneur of the Year by EY, and I suppose I mean, you having this imposter syndrome at that moment, uh, up to that point, if you were to look at your career prior to that, you'd been an accountant, a teacher, and then you had ran your own law practice. It was, I suppose you would have taken things from the start of your career, but it was totally different to when you decided to become an entrepreneur. And I'm interested in how that side of things might have prepared you for your career in business.
I never knew I was an entrepreneur. I didn't know what the word meant. So when I was starting running businesses, I said, like, I ended up winning EY Entrepreneur of the Year. I didn't know what an entrepreneur was. I felt an imposter syndrome. But I think it's important throughout life, with all the experiences, that you say to yourself, what I learn, what can I take with me? What will I not take with me? So working with KPMG as an accountant, I learned and understood accounts really well. Could read accounts like you read a book, and really read and understand the story behind it. And there is a story. When you look at the figures, they're not just figures. There's a lot more, as you know, there's a lot more to it. I enjoyed that. But the weakness for me was I didn't have real interaction with people. It was about a piece of paper and a P&L and a balance sheet or cash flow or debtors or creditors ledger or a payroll. It was about that piece of paper. It wasn't about the individual. So during that journey, I discovered that I really need to be around people. And then I bumped into my old headmaster one day. We went for a coffee a Saturday, and he said, I think you'd be a great teacher. Would you think on teaching? He said, if you go back and do the HDIP, I'll give you teaching hours. I said, Jesus, why not? So I left the accountancy and I went back teaching. I got a full-time job in the school that I was a student in. And when I was teaching, I always wanted to be the best teacher I could for the sake of the students. It was really important to me. Anything I ever did, I don't mind failing. Failing's not an issue. Failing's part of life. But I wanted to give it my best shot. I don't mind failing provided I give it my best shot. But I do mind failing if I didn't give it my best shot. That really annoys me. So I modelled myself on my commerce teacher when I was in the school, who was teaching now with me. Brilliant teacher. And after about 2 years, I realised, Pádraig, you shouldn't be modelling yourself on somebody else. You got to be your own personality. So I kind of ditched that and I started bringing my own. So Leaving Cert math students were not allowed to call me sir, they'd call me Pádraig. I would not sit behind a desk. I'd throw the desk aside because we're all together. I used to get the students to write their own Leaving Cert maths book. Each student wrote their own Leaving Cert. I introduced mindfulness, this is 30 years ago, into the classroom. I introduced students working with and teaching each other. And I could end up with 40 plus students in my class. And I prefer to teach pass maths than honours maths, because that's a bigger challenge and a bigger satisfaction for kids when they get through. And I went at my own time and cost, went to the UK, went to America to learn about how to teach better. So I introduced law into the school because I studied law at night. And I kind of wrote a law book, I suppose, and called it a law book. Kind of a notebook, I suppose. And in transition year, I used to teach the students about law. I'd bring them up to the district court to get a sense of what's it like with the court, what a judge does, what a solicitor does, what a barrister does, what's the Irish Constitution, what's their rights if they get a summer job, what's the sale of goods and supply of services. If they buy something to sale, can they get their money back? All of those things. Kids loved it, really loved it. And the headmaster contacted me as a Jesuit at the time and said, would you be interested in going for the principalship of the school, because as I'm going to be leaving soon, I'm looking for a lay principal in the Jesuit school. And I thought about it and I said no. And I suppose my challenge was not in the classroom. It was in relation to some cliques in the staff room, to be honest with you. So that was stressing me and I decided to take a career break. I was a qualified solicitor as well, and I decided to set up a law practice. I had young kids at the time. It was high risk. I said, I'll go for it, and I did. And I sold the law practice, and that helped me invest in little airline going to the Aran Islands, and then built that up. And then also, a couple of guys came to me, they owned 50 or so, 60% of a local printing company, and they were afraid they'd lose their jobs. The company was going bad. So they sold me their shares and what they paid for them, and I built up the company and I sold it back to them again for what I had paid them for it. But at that stage, turnover had gone up by probably 250% or more. And then I am passionate about the Irish language, and I tendered. There was a government contract for an Irish language newspaper, weekly newspaper, and I tendered for it. Knew nothing about newspapers. Could hardly read one or mind anything else. Look, I might as well tell you the truth. So I tendered for it. The chairperson of the assessment committee was Micheál O'Mara Hertig, the great Micheál O'Mara Hertig, who was Kerry Irish and Mike Connemara Irish. And they gave me the contract. I said, Jesus, what do I do now? So I went out and I sought a guy who happened to be a brilliant guy, Brendan Delap from Donegal. He was teaching a primary school in Clondalkin. And I got him to be the full-time editor of the newspaper and built it up. And that newspaper was going really, really well. Then did a deal with the Irish Independent, so it's available free of charge to the Irish Independent every Wednesday. And we had, at that time, about 250,000 copies printed in a week. It's going really, really, really well. And then I tendered for it again, and there was this guy at the top table, the interview board, who told me I couldn't continue to distribute at the Irish Independent. I said, why? He said, oh, we don't like the Irish Independent, for whatever reason. And I said, I'm going to continue, because if I do it on my own, without the Irish Independent, I'm selling 8 or 9 or 10,000 copies a week. With the Irish Independent, there's 250,000 people at least seeing it once a week on a Saturday morning. I said, no. I said, well, if you're blocking me from selling it through the Irish Independent, get somebody else to do it. So I pulled away for it. I would have pretty fundamental principles in life that I won't compromise on, that are important to me, that are, I suppose, lighthouses for me, particularly in rough weathers and rough seas, that I can follow. And I'm good and I'm happy with that.
Did ambition or a desire to make money, did that factor in any way in any of these decisions along the way?
No.
Is it, and I suppose for many young people that might be listening to this, they might be trying to get ahead in life, and that they're thinking about business as a way to make money. That never factored into your consideration whatsoever.
No, I needed to make money. I wanted to make money so that my wife and kids and so on could have a reasonable lifestyle. That she would have a car and could do whatever she wanted, and I'd have a car, and we're not on one car between the two of us, and that we lived in a nice house and where we want to live in Connemara, and that we could go on a holiday or two a year, the normal stuff that everybody. So I needed money for that. That was hugely important to me, so it was. But I never aimed to be the richest kid on the block or anything like that. That to me is paramount. Was that bullshit? So it is. Like, to me, the measure of a person is who you are, not what you have. I know a lot of very, let's call it, successful people who have a serious amount of money. Jesus. None of them are happy. I had a meeting with a guy today, actually. He's an investment advisor. And we were talking about investments. And he was saying, here's this person who sold a company. He netted 60 million. And last year, he made 7 million on his investment profit. And he was saying that this investor was saying, what's the difference between 60 million and 67 million from his point of view? It's going to drive the same car, still go on holidays, wear the same clothes, sleep in the same bed. It's really important to know when enough is enough. When I was a judge for the World Entrepreneur of the Year, the chairman of the judging panel was a guy called Howard Stevenson, who was a Harvard professor of entrepreneurship. And Howard and his wife, and constantly my wife and I don't know, we connected up pretty well, and Howard would invite us out to dinner to get away from the whole extravaganza of the thing in Monte Carlo. And we became good friends. And he sent me a book called When Enough Is Enough. He wrote a book. This is probably 25 years ago. And he was saying to me, in his research, he found people accumulating more and more and more, this is an American, more and more and more money. Actually, in some ways, the more and more money they collected, the less happier they were. The more stressed they were in, what will I do with this money? How can I protect it? What will I do? Will I give it to the kids? Am I spoiling the kids? Where am I at with all of this? And they're missing out on a lot of core issues in relation to life. So, yeah, it's important to have a few bob to live a comfortable life that's good for you. But it's not all about money. It's the wrong rabbit you're chasing if it's just purely about money. But it is important that you do have enough money to have a comfortable life, and that money is not a stressor for you. And too little money and too much money are and can be huge stressors.
On this point, you mentioned in the book that you had gone to Southampton. Aaron were going to run was it a route from Southampton to Cork, and you met a guy in an Irish pub in Southampton. Could you talk a little bit about what he said to you and why it was so impactful at the time?
Yeah, well, wonderful. Probably one of the best people I had the privilege to work with is a girl from Wexford called Jennifer Money, and she was in charge of marketing. Jennifer was in her early mid-20s, just out of DCU. Amazing brain and a very nice, genuine person in relation to marketing and strategy. And she organised the marketing side of things with Southampton Airport, with Duncork, Southampton. So she said, Pádraig, you got to come over. They want you over there for the launch, so on. So I did. And the Southampton Airport wanted to bring us to an Irish pub. So we went in the minibus, ended up in the Irish pub. And this guy came up to me and he said, I want to introduce you to my wife. And I said, fine. So I went down. He was sitting down having a meal and stuff from his wife. And he says, he was just retiring or just going to retire. And he was the head guy of, I think it's AIB for the southern region of the UK, which include London. And after our initial conversation, he said, look, can I give you a bit of advice? I said, big time. He said, I've met a lot of very wealthy Irish people over here. They made millions and millions. And he says, probably down to a person, man or woman, they lost either one or two or three of these things. They either lost their wealth, their health, or their family. It's one of them, two of them, or the whole three of them. He says, if you can take my advice, a person who's on the verge of retiring, who's seen all this, do your best not to lose any of those three. I'll never forget that advice. I was only talking to him for maybe 15 minutes. And so it's important to listen. We've 2 ears to listen, one mouth to talk. So important because you can learn so much.
I've never written a book, but from people
Not
who
yet.
have, not yet.
Good
No
man.
one would read mine. But I've heard from people who have written books that they're difficult to write. They're kind of a painful. It's a painful process to go through. It can take a long time. Why did you feel that you wanted to write this book about decision making?
Two things. I'm going to share a joke with you. A rugby joke. The aforementioned great guy called Trevor Brennan wrote a book about 10 years ago, more, 15 years ago. And the book was up for the best business book of the year in Ireland. And there was a big gig on in the Mansion House. And Derek Hughes, a very good friend of mine who owned Hughes and Hughes Bookshop at the time, invited me to the top table. There I was, dressed in my tux and well-mannered and so on, or the best mannered I could be. And I know Trevor pretty well, as I mentioned earlier. And it read out the best sports book of the year is Trevor Brennan's book. Trevor goes and he starts looking for his jacket and who'd run up but Jerry Thormley. And Jerry took the microphone and started talking in lovely, eloquent Cork English and so on about his challenge in writing the book and so on and so forth. Trevor said, give me the microphone. Trevor started talking about he peddling around Ireland and selling the book. And he said he ended up around 11 or 12 o'clock in the day in the Sin Bin, which was a pub owned in Limerick by Classy. And he said, we're having a chat and a few pints. And do you know, he said, this is to 1,000 people. At the end of the night, it was up. He says, it's around 11 or half 11. And he says, the Claw asked me a question. He says, who wrote the book for you, Trevor? He said, I turned around to him and I said, who read it for you? So the reason I'm telling you that is I listen to books, but I don't read them too often. But There was a fella I used to, I suppose, mentor or coach, great guy, called Enda McNulty. You might know him or know of him. Yeah. Enda actually was with the Irish rugby team as the top psychology coach with them. And Enda phoned me up in the early days of COVID. Pádraig, how you doing? How you getting on? And so on. He said, what's your plan for COVID? I said, how do you mean? He said, we're going to be, I don't know how long we're going to be locked down. You want to leave home? You need to kind of do something with your time and something productive. I said, geez, I never thought about that. He said, well, you write that book. I've been telling you for years to write the book. And I says, I was thinking of Trevor Brennan's thing. I said, sure, look, I can hardly read a book, never mind write one. He said, come on, quit that rubbish. He says, I'll get you, I suppose, a writing coach. I said, that'd be really helpful. Actually, the guy who lives in Galway, who helped, Enda has written, I think, 3 books. And Enda used this guy to help him. And help him kind of structure his thoughts and so on. So did that. So I was going to write about leadership. And this fella said to me, John Hearn is his name, he said, you're not going to write about leadership. I said, why not? 2 reasons. One is leadership is wall to wall in Eason's and every place you go. Any business book, if you look in business section, half the books are on leadership. And he says, you're talking to me about something that's much more important than pure leadership, because the essence of leadership. He says, you're going to write about decision making. I said, why that? And he said to me, well, remember we talked about, and you said, what's the single most important word in aviation? One word, single most important word. If you'd ask Willie Walsh or Michael O'Leary or anybody who'd be sitting here, guaranteed they'd say the same thing. It's not profit, it's not money, it's not cash flow, it's not airplanes, it's not routes. It's safety. Most important word in aviation. What's the most important thing about safety? Decision making. Think of Captain Sully going into the East River or the Hudson River. You have to make a decision like that. So what you do is you train your team that they can, so you have a good team, train them that they can make the best decisions they can given whatever circumstances. Give them the resources, computers, AI now and so on, to help them make good decisions. And trust them to make those decisions. So in 26 years, with up to 900 flights a week, we didn't have a serious accident once. Not once did we have a serious. That's why and without fully realizing it, I was creating the culture and the environment for my team to make decisions. And I trusted them with those decisions. And they developed a confidence and a belief in decision making. And that's what the book was about. And quite frankly, it's the single biggest area that's not taught in schools, how to make decisions. It's so important because that defines our life. That defines who we are, what decisions we make. So that's why I wrote the book on decision making.
Did you see that documentary about the 747 MAX Boeing airplanes and how they ended up? There was some glitch in them, basically, but there was an amazing documentary on Netflix about how the culture of Boeing became over time, because of the competition with Airbus, how the culture had basically turned into a culture of shoot the messenger. So if anyone had a problem, no one was able to make a decision to change something, because it was, if someone's bringing me a problem, they're a problem, basically. And the culture of the manufacturer essentially led to having these accidents.
I didn't see that Netflix program, but I'm aware of that's what happened in relation to the Boeing aircraft and so on. Absolutely. And there's a blind eye thrown to it. And also, the Federal Aviation Authority, FAA in America, in my view, did not do the level of due diligence and auditing and oversight and regulatory oversight of Boeing that they should have. Boeing is such a big organization, such a big company, we'll follow. And also, what I understand, there were some people who actually had worked in Boeing, but were now working for the Aviation Authority. That would never happen in Ireland. Well, in my experience, the Irish Aviation Authority are one of the best in the world. They take no mess and they take no prisoners, but you know where you stand. And it's all about safety. I have huge respect for them. So I do.
Pádraig O'Céidigh, it's been a pleasure having you in today. Thank
Are
you
we
very much
finished?
for coming. We're nearly finished. I have
I'm only joking. I was
one
looking at
final
your watch.
question.
I need to go to Connemara.
One final. I know you're driving back west right now, and we're in the evening. So thank you very much for coming. You mentioned earlier that you didn't regret at all going into the business, even no matter how hard it was. I'm wondering, do you have any other regrets at all throughout life? If there was anything you could change, what would it be?
The single biggest, partial, greatest decision I ever made, but it's only a partial decision, was convincing my wife to marry me. That's the truth. What do I regret?
Why is that so important? It's interesting because actually, Warren Buffett has given the advice to younger people. Is he says that that's the most important decision you make is who you marry. And I'm wondering, for you, why have you found that to be the case?
Because she loved me through thick and thin. She stuck with me. She believed in me when I didn't even believe in myself. A very different person, the way she thinks and acts to me. Helped me get grounded. Realize what's important in life and what's not. And no more than any of us, like she and we all have got our flaws. That's normal. But they're accepted, and we said, look, we're only human. I didn't know Warren Buffett said that, but I certainly would agree with him on that. What do I regret? I actually regret not selling the airline when I could have and got a serious load of cash for it. I regret staying for as long as I did in teaching. I kind of regret, I regret staying for as long as I did in running Irish colleges. Coláiste the Gaeilge, in the summertime, Coláiste the Connacht. This is a little strange one. I actually regret not playing more rugby, because I'd played kind of schoolboys rugby and I could have played more, and I didn't. Just played Gaelic football and hurling in college. What else? There's plenty of them.
Well, it's interesting actually as you're talking. They seem to be things that you didn't do, or things that you wish you had done earlier, rather than things you did.
Yeah, no, I don't regret doing any of the things. I've done lots of things in life, and I'm glad I did. I'm delighted I did. So I am, because I was kind of just challenging myself, looking at what the greater world is like out there, and just giving it my best shot, and not being afraid of failure at all. But not being afraid of failure is not something that I wake up in the morning, I'm not going to be. It's something you actually condition your brain and mind to do. To actually, what's going to happen now if I fail? What's the repercussions? How much? So you've pre-planned it, in the sense that if this happens, this is how I'm going to deal with it. This is how I'm going to deal with it. What else? I regret not selling nursing homes about 3 years before I sold them. I do not regret being a senator. I really enjoyed that. That was a huge privilege. Huge privilege. Yeah, they're the big ones.
I think that's a good note to finish on, Pádraig O'Céidigh. Thank you
Gur
very
míle
much for
magat.
coming in. Gur míle magat.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.